So we have Doug Boneparth joining shortly. Doug is a longtime friend of mine who I encouraged to get a Substack. And also, I wanted to start a podcast for a while. So we're going to get really scrappy, like levels of scrappy that you're not even prepared for, and just going to do this, and we'll suck at it for a long time. And we might have Doug joining. And eventually we might get decent at it. That's not something I can promise here. But with that said, there's, I found with the internet projects, there's no reason not to just start things and be bad at them and eventually get okay. I'm not going to say get great. I think it's a long process from okay or like totally awful to okay, and then it's an infinite space between okay and perfect, and you will never get to perfect, and that's a fun challenge to work on. So let's text Doug. You're behind the scenes right now. We're going to include this in the podcast. Sent you Gmail link. So we'll see if Doug joins. So we're using the Zoom app. I can fix my hair before I join. See, the problem with doing Doug as a person is that, or as an interview with video, is his hair is so good that like there's no way that like I'm gonna look awful. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter. Like Doug is known for two things: his hair and his coffee. And he's a coffee. Admit. Welcome, Sir Doug Boneparth.
Hold on.
We're already recording, and I did an intro that's super behind the scenesy about you. So the audience knows who you are. And I've always wanted to do a podcast. You're sort of throwing me into the mix of starting. And I was saying, I'm going to start super scrappy, and it's going to take a long time to be okay, but there's no reason not to just start an internet project and suck at it. And you suck at it for a long time. It doesn't matter how much prep work you do, you're going to suck at it. So you just have to start.
Yeah, it's reps. It's all about putting in reps. I, just launched my newsletter, relaunched it after not doing it for like 3 years. And I started feeling, how I felt in the early days of, why isn't this fire after one post? And by the way, the first one actually turned out great because I'd actually built an audience when I finally decided to relaunch it. Here I am trying to set up my microphone. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I mean, the more you tell yourself that you got like years and reps and just like, okay, you just started writing, do it 150 times. You started YouTube, create a couple hundred videos. And the cool part about that is you can look back at your first ones relative to like number 200, and it's just so incredibly different. And you still might not be where you want to be, but you can see all the growth and all the change. And it literally shows up in subscriber count and viewership. Like it just happens. People notoriously don't want to put in the reps.
By the way, I'm cheating on your coffee this morning with Diet Coke. I already told the audience about you being Mr. Coffee. We already have established this. So that context has been set. I just wanted to show you that I'm having Diet Coke, not coffee.
So we're having an annual ugly sweater party. And I failed to get the sweater. So last year up from in time, but this year I ordered a complete Folgers ugly Christmas sweater. It's got 3 of the big jugs of Folgers and just the brand across the chest. So anyone who knows me, I probably loathe, cheap commercialized coffee like that. And I'm going to wear a K-cup necklace of Folgers crystals as well. What do you think? You probably like that. You probably like this.
You're like, you're already set for remember the cliched like New Year's Eve party aesthetic where like you're wearing a lamp or something
Yeah.
stupid. You
Yeah,
already have that
exactly.
aesthetic. You're ready for New Year's. I have no idea why people do that. I think like my first exposure to that was actually reading Garfield comics when I was in like fifth grade, and Garfield like ended up in a
Yeah.
lamp at a New Year's party, and I still haven't. I haven't closed the loop on why they
That never really happened to us. That has to be like a boomer thing. Like
cocaine in the 80s and 90s are just like, okay,
that's how you end up with a lampshade over your head. I'm not a big New Year's guy in general.
they birthed McAfee. So
True.
it just, that says it all, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, we can do the formal introduction. We have Doug Boneparth on episode 1 of Hot Takes podcast. This will be unlike any other podcast you've ever heard before because it's going to be awful at the beginning. This is episode 1
because there's no script or thought put into the format.
You know what? There is script and thought because what the audience doesn't know is, Doug, you and I talk almost every day.
Yeah.
Right, either before, at lunch, on the way to lunch. So we've been doing this. Like some of those conversations are more like, a lot of that we probably can't say on a podcast. Not that it's like bad or anything. It's just like,
yeah, it's just personal,
a little too raw sometimes. Anyway, but we'll touch on some of that here. But anyway, Doug, who are you? Why are we talking? Like in your own words.
Yeah, so I'm the president and founder of a wealth management firm called Boneparth Wealth. I was one of the first financial advisors to really focus on millennials, right? You got laughed at when you were in your 20s to say, hey, I want to help millennials with their money. And any manager, in wealth management would be like, go home and think about what you just said. There's no money to do that. But I thought that was crazy because I watched our generation at the older end really eat it in 08 and 09. And that for me was the greatest opportunity. So I was one of the first movers when it came to like millennial personal finance. And I became the thought leader in the space and built an entire wealth management firm around that. And with that and a background, at least an academic background in journalism, I was really able to leverage mainstream media, dive into the internet side of things, as well as figure out how to build a marketing machine around that. Because if you're going to build any business, you also need to build a pipeline. And building a pipeline of clients that are buying you, like you're the service, you're the product, is very difficult. Like there are times I wish I was selling a widget, because I could have a nice web page and it'd be e-commerce and you're buying the thing, right? Like here's the description. If the product's good, people are going to buy it. If you can market it well, people will buy more of it. But in this instance, it's all you, it's credibility. And, when you're late 20s saying, hey, I know everything there is to know, which I don't, about, personal finance, or I can help you with your financial life, whether you know that or not. That was a pretty tall order, but I had no choice. I had no choice but to work on, those specific marketing functions that would build the pipeline that created the business I operate today.
Yeah, and I don't know how much we want to get into this, but I think you hit on something because a lot of millennials don't have any sort of formalized financial education or background. I'll even take it a step back. I don't think even Gen X or boomers have a formalized education. I think that's really something that
correct. It's across all generations. It's not specific to millennials, but it has caught up to millennials from the 08-09 debacle.
Right. And I think that, myself included, it's not like when I was growing up, I heard from, I had one parent family, but I never heard from either my mother, from school to say, hey, you can't beat the market. You shouldn't have speculative investments. You should just buy index funds, focus on your work, and you're going to have a much easier, happier life. So,
it's crazy how that works. When you're left to your own devices and you lack the knowledge to do the things that you just described, what you end up doing is speculating. What you end up doing is trying to get rich quick or jump on the latest trend, whatever that may be at the time. And then,
but Doug, I know what photosynthesis means.
So exactly. You can do angle side angle, right? But you don't know how to be disciplined with how money comes in and out of your life.
I can diagram sentences, Doug, which we do with that skill.
Yeah, I don't know. Trigonometry, not sure the last time cosine has showed up in my life. But
Well, now GPT-3 can do all of
now
this
it
for
can
the
do it
kids.
all for you. And what's unfortunate is that, like, the sooner you get the knowledge, the sooner you can be, we're going to talk about doing the reps a lot today, whether it's content creation or, getting good at, fundamentals of personal finance. The sooner you get into creating the muscle memory and doing the repetition of essentially very boring stuff, right? Number go up, number go down, and track that month to month and see what your behaviors are doing. It's boring and it's hard. Don't let anyone trick you into thinking that, like, creating discipline around very boring fundamental, money stuff is an easy thing to do. Most people fail at diets. Most people fail at consistent exercise. And for those same reasons, most people fail at doing a really good job of staying consistent and being in control of money in their life.
And so, I mean, that's a great point. And I think a problem is everything from media narratives, both in fiction and in nonfiction, where finance story shows, the person who made 5 million, by 25 or whatever, but also even in the fiction narratives that we show sort of these important pivotal moments in people's lives that change
It's
things.
survivorship bias, right?
But it's more than that. We show the exciting parts in fiction. We don't show the boring day-to-day stuff where, someone built the skills to be, win a gold medal, right? As an example.
They built the time machine, but you don't hear about the 30 years of astrophysics and, multi-planetary construction of elements, whatever. You don't hear that. You just see time machine and then the adventure begins.
Right. And so I think it's kind of an assault, right? It's not even just media anymore. It's, Doug, you're one of the most interesting, funny people on Twitter, for example, and not just Twitter, but TikTok, Instagram, all of these things have this instant, gratification, dopamine rush thing that everyone talks about. Now, you and I sort of use these things a little differently. I think we're using them like, I see people saying, oh, you shouldn't tweet, you're going to get fired. I'm like, wait, Twitter has gotten me every job I've had, Twitter blogging, et cetera, have gotten me every job I've had for the last 10 years. And so I think there's like ways you can use these things, but do you also want to talk a little bit about how you use social and micro content? Because I think there's this notion that it has to be a silly thing, and you sort of balance the fun and humor and silliness with also the, hey, here's Doug who's trustworthy enough to manage my finances.
Yeah. And it's gotten out of balance, lately and over the last 2.5 years. And we can get into that. When I think about all of this, and I think about, like, specifically my journey in content creation, and we can drill that specifically to Twitter for a second. It took a very long time. All of these things, if you haven't figured it out yet, all of these things that you want when it comes to, like, I want a follower count, I want an audience, I want to get business out of that. First thing you got to say to yourself is, I'm playing a long game, right? The better you are at accepting that reality and applying yourself to the long game, the bigger the rewards and how the bigger the rewards are going to be, because you got delayed gratification involved, not immediate gratification. And that is always the case, whether it's your financial life or your career, and anything big that you really want to do. But, like, it's gotten out of balance. I used to, like, go back 3 years. I used to put in those reps again. It was 80 weeks in a row of writing a blog, right? Some weeks were great. Some weeks were not. Actually, I'd say the 80, if you applied the 80-20 rule and say 80 were shit and 20% were good, it was probably the 95-5 rule here. Like, I can count on one or two hands of those 80 posts that were bangers, right? That were so, relative to what I was accustomed to getting. But that's not important. By the way, it did all the things it generated the web traffic I wanted. It built the top end of the funnel that I wanted. But by no means did I walk away from those 80 posts saying I'm some kind of prolific writer. And you don't need to be. I think that's the point when it comes to that type of marketing, where you're building out the top of the funnel. Then you, like, switch over to Twitter, which I don't think is a really good top end of a funnel relative to, like, creating thought leadership and and also being able to manipulate how people click on things and where they go and pop up things in their face to subscribe to something. So it's not a whole ton of call to action in the realm of, like, Twitter. So that's that micro content. Doug tells a joke, gets a laugh, gets a dopamine hit, and gets a follower. And I got really good at that. all that really did, so it did two things. It built me a very large audience that I now can go back to what I was doing previously. Like, imagine if those 80 weeks of writing were paired with the 220,000 followers on Twitter. Back then, it was paired with like 20,000 followers, and those were all bots. I'm sure of it. Now you can bring those two things together, hence the need to get back to balancing these things.
Yeah. So what Doug is talking about for marketers here who want to have takeaways. So I find it interesting that a lot of marketers hate Twitter, and they're really bad at Twitter because they're treating it as just another channel to advertise and not be interesting. So you're in a place where, you're in attention Thunderdome with millions of other people trying to, create the most interesting, highest value, ideally non-spam things. And most marketers don't know how to do that.
Mario.
But marketers are used to paying for attention. They don't know how to get it organically. Very few. Right. So that's why I think Doug is such a great example. If you are a marketer and you want to do this right, which I know most marketers listening to this already get it. The ones who need to hear this aren't listening to a podcast or reading a Substack about marketing. So it's free alpha for you to look at what Doug does and do it for your category. Doug obviously puts his thumb on the scales of the things in finance that get attention, and he knows how to do that. And when he does that, even with humor, it shows his understanding of the category. And really, when you can do that in a way with humor, it's not like here are, 10 tips on how to do X. It's like Doug is metacognitive enough to make it interesting and funny. That's hard. That's not something you can replicate with AI yet. And so when Doug does that, he's building trust with people. The other thing that Doug was talking about, which was super interesting for marketers, is Doug understands the notion of having a hub on the web, like, his blog or his newsletter, where he's using that to funnel people from Twitter, from TikTok, from Instagram, from all these other places to a place he controls. And the reason that's important is, what if the algo changes rules, like Instagram prioritizing celebs? What if there's drama on Twitter with, Elon doing X, Y, and Z, which, by the way, Twitter's never been managed well. I think it's funny people are losing their shit over Elon. It's a cockroach company. The core product is so strong, they're going to survive. So, but the point is those are platforms you still don't control. You can love them and, think they're managed great and have a great time there. But at the same time, Doug can talk about in finance, the importance of a diversified portfolio. You don't go all in on Dogecoin or go all in on GameStop, right? So for your marketing, if you think in portfolio theory for, the channels of attention, which are helping bring people back to a hub, you want to bring them to the place where they opt in at the source. So every time, you publish a new post or send an email, I think YouTube is probably the only place where, since they allow direct subscription to your videos, that it's okay to consider that a hub. But other than that, what you're doing is you're creating interesting content for them that gets links, that gets indexed in search engines. You're not getting any of the sort of compounding effects of marketing.
Yeah, I always viewed, so a couple things, number one, when it comes to marketers looking to specifically with Twitter or whatever social media platform they think their audience, use the platform where the audience you want is, right? That's number one. Like you're going for the boomers, you probably want Facebook, right? You want elder millennials, Twitter and Instagram's the way to go. You want Gen Z, Snapchat, TikTok, obviously Instagram as well. The second thing I want to mention is, when you say go look at what Doug's doing, I want to put a little context behind that. What Doug is doing is what Doug is. Yeah, it's what Doug is good at. And yeah, you filed that under like being himself. Yeah, authenticity is a great anyone
who says they're trying to be authentic is bullshitting. You're not authentic. You literally show up and it's like the same Doug that I would get over a coffee.
Gotta be the same. I'll make these same jokes in real life. I'll try and get a laugh just the same way. That's what I'm good at. So when I was dealing with the financial world or financial content, right? I was an okay writer. I'm not going to be the prolific writer. I'm not going to be Morgan Housel. I'm not going to be our friends that are just epic writers. I don't do technical analysis, so don't expect a mesmerizing stock chart out of me. I don't know how the hell you make that entertaining to begin with. When bottom. Yeah. Oh, here's the 8,000 day moving average on, grass. let's go long, wheat futures. I don't know that stuff. I'm not good at it, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. I'm good at knowing the narratives of the day, of the moment, right? Because I'm just addicted to the internet and I get bombarded with that, and I can filter it very well. That's what I'm good at. And I'm good at with humor, right? Wit, jokes, and I can blend these things together to create a product, right? To create content, micro content in this case, that's highly attractive to an audience. And it took years and years and years to discover that. I actually spent my first few years on Twitter really just networking. Who are the players, right? Who are the thought leaders, the players, the funny people, the influencers in this space? I need a social climb with them so they can give me credibility.
Oh, see, I was just shit posting from day one. See,
yeah. I transitioned into shit posting.
But we were doing this since the forum days of the 90s. So Twitter is still just a forum. I think everyone dressing it up as anything else is wrong. It's the comment section of the internet. And so when you and I talk about this a lot, something that I've seen repeatedly is that people lose their shit online over debates, right? This is why trolls exist, because they know they can like push their thumb on certain topics and emotions, and people get mad. I'm like, but it's the internet. Like, it's not real. They're having this discussion online and just they're fucking with you, These
are anonymous strangers in the ether that you've decided to get emotional around.
It's crazy. And then, you shouldn't let anyone live rent-free in your head. It's like, none of it matters. Turn your computer off and walk outside, and literally no one cares. It's not the New York Times. It's not the Wall Street Journal. So, but with that said, so that's other people. If you're going to use these tools professionally, you should have the expectation that anything you say could be put in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal. And so, like, someone should do a book on the art of shitposting, wherein you have a little fun, but also if something you said was quoted, in the New York Times or, on the Today Show, you wouldn't have to call your mother and do some explaining, right? And I think you're really good at that, Doug. I think you're probably one of the few people who does it. And it's still, as a marketer who is media trained or social media trained, many executives, like you would be a dream client because you already get it. A lot of people just don't, they don't get it, whether they don't know how to take it seriously or they take it too seriously, so they're really boring. It's this interesting thing that sort of, I thought, because I've been doing this since like 2008, 2009, helping companies and execs come online. I thought at this point I wouldn't have to do this work anymore. Wouldn't be out of a job. I would just be doing other parts of marketing. And that's not true in the slightest, even for other millennials. And I don't know why that is, because I see people like you and you're so naturally good at it. And maybe it comes back to the reps you put in, so to speak. But
reps are important. But look, I'm blessed with the gift of gab and your
gift of gab. I love that.
Right. The golden tongue. But it's also extreme extrovertedness, right? I draw my energy on constantly being surrounded by people, whether I can do that in real life and I can do that online as well. It's a blessing and also a curse at times. I just want to back up to something that you said previously about, to me, it sounded like how you build the marketing machine. And I want to be very clear here. Well, you can be great, at Twitter or shit posting or charts or whatever it is that you're really good at. More than likely, just viewing it in the context of one thing, you need to remember that's just one gear turning in what ultimately is a much larger marketing machine that you're building. And I think that in early stages, like what I had learned in building this thing is I couldn't really afford not to try everything, right? Whether you're good at it or not. I view Twitter now as started out as a small gear in the machine. Now it's a big one. Writing went from a big one to, and they're always changing. But can you build yourself something with the tools that are available to you? Can you get those small gears turning so that the bigger gears turn? And what will happen then? Out comes a desired result. Like, I remember doing all of this, grinding content, trying everything. And then one day, right, the prospect meeting request came through my email. Like, the actual demonstration that you funneled someone through it, and out came a lead. And not only was it a lead, it was someone who then signed up. And I can't tell you how excited, it was the worst unqualified lead I had ever experienced. I ended up firing the client. It's the only time that probably has ever happened in my career, but I didn't care. I didn't care, because anyone who is applying themselves and putting in the reps and finally sees product come out of it, or result come out of it that you've been building this thing for in the first place, it's literally the happiest day of your life. It shows you that it works. And now the game isn't, do I need to build it? It's, I need to just make it better than how, I got this thing running. Right. And now comes the part of swapping out belts and gears and bips and bops, to make it run that much more efficiently, and then see what it is you're really good. What worked really, really well out of all these things. I'm probably going to go double down on the thing that worked really, really well, and be very cautious about the things that didn't. Now that you have, actual results to play with.
Yeah, let me ask you a question that I think is interesting here, slightly provocative, for at least my listeners who are marketers. There's a little bit of a broader trend going on wherein things like academia, institutions, sort of big established juggernauts, whether they're companies or governments, are sort of punching a box, right? They're going through the motions. It's not a meritocracy. It's very much politically rewarded. And I've seen that be very true, but not talked about in my sector of marketing. And I bet you have opinions on this, because you're sort of like, you're not a marketer. You're running a financial advisory firm, but you do better marketing than people in the craft. So I think it's interesting, because
you have to,
but I think it's interesting because a lot of the things you're saying, like, I would have loved for clients when I was at I'm no longer consulting now, but when I was at a consultancy consulting for VPs and CMOs, people 20 years older than me, I couldn't get them to understand the basic things you do. And so I guess I wonder, as an outsider who views companies posting cringe tweets and, Meta, who's a tech company, posting like, we all gonna make it, replying to like Budweiser, and no one, even the crypto people, are like, what is this? Like, I'm curious what the optics are for you of when you see bad marketing at a company and you see great marketing as someone who's not a marketer, but in the craft. Like, what does that make you feel about the company or think about the company? What does that make you think about marketing? I'm just curious. Anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah, the one that pops into my mind was, all right, it was Tampax. Here we are bringing up female hygiene, and two dudes talking about this, but let's go with that. I don't even know if I want to repeat what they said. It was like, where you're sliding into her DMs and we're in her, and
Awful.
Not only is it awful, right? And look, I'm here for the I shit post daily. I make jokes. I don't know if it was you who I think it was my one of my friends. It could have been you, actually. We said like, yo, like, Tampax should not try and be Wendy's, right? Which is like notorious for, like, Wendy's figured it out. Like, they're really good at just owning people online.
That's their brand. They figured it out for them.
Yeah. And they're one of the first to do it, and trying to replicate, like what they're doing. Who owns Tampax? Procter and Gamble. I don't know who was thought this was a good idea, but like, it was so bad that of course it went viral, but for all the wrong reasons, right? Years ago, when I was getting into like fights with Maxwell. Remember the Maxwell house? Like, there was this, I was clowning, back to like Folgers and, shitty coffee brands. Like, I got into a Twitter spat with Maxwell House, and like, they were just, this is an international company, with however many followers, duking it out with a financial advisor online, who's just making jokes about how objectively bad their coffee is. And, I'm like, wow, whoever's running this account is literally getting fired tomorrow. Like, so those are like two examples of where you can really see large brands, struggle with trying to identify what's going to work for them. And there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah, let me share why I asked that question. So for many years, senior marketers and leadership at big companies have said the internet doesn't matter. And then they said social doesn't matter. And they say things don't matter. And they generally are change averse and they don't want to deal with them. So what's happened is a lot of these companies have given social as example, even email in a lot of cases, to very junior people. Email is a fun one because the email managers tend to just spam people to get KPIs, and senior, CMO only cares about the TV ads. They don't, it's too below them, right? But I think I have a thesis that having a great presence on social where you delight your customers is either misunderstood or valued at almost zero by the old guard of marketer, and they only value the interruption ads and the paid media so much. And so I asked you the question of what you thought, because you have fun online, but you also take it seriously. And you also are using it, as this lead generation tool for your company. And it's just the sort of dichotomy between, okay, Doug, runs his business, has to take everything, with a surgical approach and refine over time to survive. And then these big companies just don't care. So maybe it's arbitrage if you're like a young person, you're a solopreneur, to do really well online, and businesses aren't going to get it, and who cares? And it's just this opportunity for you until, and maybe it's never the case. Maybe businesses can never get people in that role that care because they're not paying them enough, and they need to have sort of, a valuation of the role that's consummate to the value. It's just something that I ask because there's still a dichotomy, and I think the brands that get it right are so memorable, like Wendy's, for example, where, they found this voice for themselves. It's dunking on people, but people get it, versus, okay, I'm the Tampax social media manager, and I'm just trying to, juice KPIs for the quarter, right?
Right. Again, it goes back to trying and repetition. And I hate it when people say like, and a little bit of luck is involved. Let's replace luck with timing. So right place, right time, right? Just being aware and conscious of what it is you're offering, whatever product or service it is. I think having an awareness of what's going on around you, in your industry, in the world, in society, allows you to be tactical with deploying whatever it is that you think you're good at. Like, I live and die by knowing what's going on. I'm lucky it's, the financial markets and business, which never sleeps, never stops. There's never a dull moment. You can always find something. Just wait. If you wait just a little bit, if you can't find it, just wait a minute. It's going to happen. I'm fortunate in that regard. So maybe I'm catching a break on that, why I can deploy humor very quickly. But, this is also why it's really hard. How many financial professionals are out there trying to make jokes or show their charts or display their writing that just don't build audiences, and they are putting in reps. So it is just inherently challenging and requires a large set of skills. And I've said it a couple of times, nothing will get you to success faster than having no choice, right? Than having your back against a wall. And I harbored that feeling, early on in my career. If this doesn't work, we're going to have huge problems. That's also a function of, I'm the CEO, the founder, and the CMO, and the and the COO, and the compliance officer. So yeah, you're inundated with all of these roles, but it's my skin in the game. It's my name. It's my reputation, and we have to make it work because failure is not an option. When it's a 23-year-old social media manager getting their feet wet in the world of corporations, online marketing, and marketing in general. What's the worst they don't want to get fired here, but like, their back's not against the wall to that extent, right?
Well, I think so if you are a CMO listening to this, and I know a few do that are at big companies, what Doug just said it's asking a lot for someone in that role, and maybe that's the point. You have to have breadth of understanding of the world.
Why do they care?
You have to understand how to contextualize things. This isn't an intern job. It's just not. Are you letting interns write your your press releases or do your analyst relations? No. So why would you not take communications that are scaled even further than that more seriously? So the other interesting thing that I think you touched on is motivation, and you're back against the wall. So I guess I wonder, you've had, some modicum of success. You've had a lot of success, not a modicum of success. You're a successful guy. How, once you get to that point, do you maintain that pace? Is it you always need your back against the wall? Do you find, I'm not going to ask for dumb habits or life hacks, maybe just like at a high level, how you like maintain that and don't just get a little bit of success and get like sort of lazy? Because I think that's something that can happen in your 30s. That does happen to a lot of people that aren't like you. They're not showing up every day, in social and now starting a new Substack. And like, what do you do?
Yeah. So not everyone is blessed with unlimited ambition. I mean, I'm an ambitious guy, but like I look at bootstrap entrepreneurs who went from nothing to selling their $2 billion business. And I'm like, holy shit, that's awesome. But like, let me really think about the level of work and ambition and drive and sacrifice that went into that. I'd like to pretend I could be that person. And the truth is I am not. And that's not to disparage the hard work, clearly the hard work and hours and reps that went into getting where I'm at today. So you can only lean on, your ambition so much here before. So you're saying once you get from back against the wall, I think that's launchpad, right? That's just getting off the ground. And then you see that you built something that works and generates business. How do you then not rest on your laurels? I mean, one of them is really a cheat code that I have, which is an amazing support system in my wife, right? I think, I am not her muse. She most certainly is mine, right? She's definitely a motivator, a pusher, someone who wants to see you do your best. I have that luxury. The second part is really just, a lot of maybe not so great traits in me, just disposition in terms of how I was raised, fear of failure and rejection that comes from how I was brought up. Thanks, Dad. That's just, embedded and hard coded in me just a little bit. And I think the biggest motivator for me is how can I get to happiness, right? How can I try this, really difficult task of, okay, what do I need to build and where do I need to get to be in a spot, if I'm being honest with myself, that's sustained happiness and comfort. So it takes a huge level of self-awareness. It takes incredible fundamentals in your own financial situation, as well as your being, right? This is where therapists are great, financial advisors are great, coaches can be great, assuming, they're all providing you with the value you need. It's pretty multifaceted. This is what's so great about individuals and human beings. They all take their past experiences, their knowledge, their current, their current talents, find a way to mesh them together to put something out there that they can ultimately do better than most people. And that's a nice metaphor for what we're talking about here in marketing. Look how much stuff you have to tinker with, how much self-awareness you need to have over what you're good at and what you're bad at, to then have the audacity and courage to go experiment with those things and put it out, whether it's to 5 people or 500,000 people, and embrace and deal with the immediate feedback, right? Getting into the feedback loop to then again have the courage to do it all over again and again and again and again. And what's so fascinating to me, I read something like from Mr. Beast the other day, who needs no explanation of who he is. Although I asked my wife if she knew who Mr. Beast was last month, and she's like, I have no idea.
Millennials don't know. Well, the base millennials know, because
elder millennials will struggle with this one. But if you're under the age of 30, you know who Mr. Beast is. I know that's younger millennials on down. And the thing was, they asked him, like, what was a bad video for you? Like, how many views? And I think he said something like, if it's under 5 million, it's not a good video. And I loved that. I love that honesty. Now, he didn't say it bothers him.
It also shows everyone, there's multiple hedonic treadmills. Everyone is on a different one. Attention is one. Doug, if you got 5 million videos for one of or 5 million views for one of your, YouTube videos, you'd probably be like going nuts right now, right? So
I got a client. He runs an amazing channel. He does something super unique. He's got 100,000 subscribers on YouTube right now. And, he has one video that did 1 million views. And, he was teaching me the ropes of how he built this because I was interested. And I really wanted to be like, why did that one get 1 million? How did it make you feel? So like back to Mr. Beast, like, you would like to think, and I could be totally wrong because I don't know him, but you would like to think that he's not bothered by this video getting 5 million while his average is closer to like 12, right? You think he wouldn't be bothered because it's such an insane number of views, right? And you and I, to your point, what would happen if we created a piece of content that got that much attention?
Well, you have tweets that got several million, views.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, fine. Never that high. I guess in some way can understand the absolute brain drain that going viral is, but that's at a level, and that comes with $1 million deals and stuff like that. You would like to think Mr. Beast, isn't like, who cares, man? I crush it every day. There's probably a part of him that's like, damn, that video sucked.
Yeah. Well, you touch on something interesting that I'm sure you talk about with your clients who may have come to you having made a bad decision or something and need to justify it. There's the hedonic treadmill, but there's also like, don't look at where someone else is and try to think that you have to have that same return, because actually, if you were to just not look at that, you would be really happy going from 0 to 1,000 in sales if you had a new e-commerce store. You'd be happy to have 1,000 viewers of your blog post if you just launched a blog, $1,000 in consulting revenue if you just started a consultancy. Like, you don't need to have that 12 million dollars views attention right now. And in fact, if you went there immediately, you might be less happy in a year than the person who, trended to it and sort of earned it. The other thing, of course, it not being sustainable is that it's like being a lottery winner in a sense, because now you always have to have more, bigger, faster. And so I think there's probably some value in having like reasonable goals that you hit, and like not making yourself this person that's now like a complete addict with whatever you're going after. And, you can be addicted to a lot of things that become, these unhealthy obsessions. So there's probably like, I don't think we have balance of this in modernity. I think everyone is, on this infinite treadmill somewhere, and there's probably some points in life to enjoy a little bit of balance, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, Doug, since you're debuting on Substack soon, can you tell us a little bit about, well, you can even start with what your past blog posts are like, what your future Substack is going to be like, what can we look forward to if we subscribe to, it's called From the Top, right?
This is the top.
This is the top. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's close. Very close. Yeah. So it's really just a rebrand of the same things I was writing about previously, which was the Invest in You newsletter. This is the top is a little more cheeky about, questioning whether or not things, will get better than they currently are. And a nod to the, expression we have in the investment world of, look out below, like there's only downside from here. But I covered three things, millennial money, parenting, and culture. That's what I'm getting into. That's what I always was into when I was writing previously. But I want to bring, here, think of it like this. If when we proclaim this is the top, are we really asking, is it the top? Right? We want to, are we going to keep flourishing? Is this the peak of my career? Am I wasting or savoring the best moments of my life? We can't help but to ask that. As millennials, we have absolutely no roadmap. I feel like the roadmap for success has been completely altered and taken away from us. A lot of the promises that were given to us, whether that's, hey, go educate yourself, in college and you'll be just fine. I feel like that completely, broke down in 08, 09. The reality is, everything's unprecedented to us. So that requires a different set of rules. And I want to explore those things again, in our generation's understanding of money, culture, and adulthood, specifically parenting. So I aim to write about these topics each week. So far, real strong start. I would love for anyone to head on over and give it a subscription, subscribe to it. It's free. And I'm really just excited to finally get back into something that I used to do and felt great about doing. It is so funny to me how uncomfortable I am right now, writing these pieces. And have enough awareness to know that if I do it enough, I'm going to get comfortable and the writing's going to get better and the subscriber count's going to go up. So that's a nice way to tie in what we were talking about here. The irony of this was getting comfortable, bailing on it because I had to go raise kids during the pandemic, falling into this, that's what the first piece is about. If you want to go read it, falling into this, dopamine madness of Twitter, which worked out for me, but did it. And when you mentioned balance earlier, that's exactly what it was. I had swung the pendulum so far the other way down that avenue that it actually had, albeit successful results, a lot of negative and unsuccessful things happening in the background that now need to be, rectified. So that's the Substack, guys. I hope you all check it out. Obviously, follow on Twitter. That's a great way to connect with me just about anywhere.
Awesome. And, Doug, it's so great to see you writing again. One word of encouragement for everyone else out there. I know a lot of you used to have personal blogs. Now you're, just spending time on TikTok and Insta and Reddit and whatnot. And I think I would encourage you to write more. I'm going to write more in the next year. I wrote around 100 posts this year, which isn't bad. That's in my
dude. That's a lot.
Back in my blogging days, I was writing 2 to 3x that.
Twice a month. I mean, twice a week on that. Wow.
And so I would encourage you to also write. I think even if no one reads it, it's this great metacognitive exercise where you're putting your thoughts down and wrangling them in a way you can't do if you just, sit and meditate. So thank you so much, Doug. And thank you for being on episode 1. When we bring you back, we're going to do a full episode on boomers, and it's going to be all about how boomers have ruined markets. I'm just kidding. We're not going to do a full episode on boomers. We'll do like 10 minutes because that will be fun. We have lots of boomer jokes. Said lovingly, we love our boomer parents and friends. We think they could do better, but in other ways they're trying their best. So we're gonna end this with positivity for the boomers.
Shout out.
Thanks so
for
much
having me, Adam. I really appreciate it.